Hello everyone. In this session of ExCAT Questions, today I am going to share the strategy for approaching a very common and one of the favorite question types of students, that is sentence rearrangement, popularly known as parajumbling. Parajumbling is a very common question type regularly tested since last 20 years in CAT. Since last 3 years, a slight change in the format has been visible in this question type, wherein the options to this question type are not given in the question paper. The test taker has to key in or enter the right sequence as per the rearrangement of the parajumble and make the paragraph into a logically coherent paragraph. What do we mean by a logically coherent paragraph? A paragraph is logically coherent when it gives absolute sense and makes the sentences meaningful. This paragraph is a single unit with logical and structural unity and does not require any other sentence to give the complete meaning. Now, when you have to rearrange all the sentences without options, this question type becomes a little time consuming and at times frustrating too when the evident links are not there. Hence, the test taker has to be really careful in rearranging the sentences into making a logically coherent paragraph. What should be the first step of rearrangement? The first step should be go through all the sentences carefully and try to identify the subject or the topic which is the focal point of the paragraph. If that is done, then try finding the sentence in which the subject or topic has been introduced. That becomes your opening sentence. You can also try looking for a sentence which has clear-cut conclusion indicators like thus, therefore, hence. That becomes the closing sentence. Let's understand this approach through an example that will appear on your screen. The first sentence is, there is a carbon footprint calculator which allows to store individual activities that help for decisions to continually sum up the carbon dioxide emissions. If you personally want to contribute to stop global warming, the calculation and constant monitoring of your personal carbon footprint is essential. The carbon footprint is a very powerful tool to understand the impact of personal behavior on global warming. Most people are shocked when they see the amount of carbon dioxide their activities create. It is very evident from the given sentences that the topic is carbon footprint, and the central idea of the paragraph is how carbon emission is increased by the behavior of people that contributes to the increase in global warming, and carbon footprint helps in understanding this kind of a behavior and calculating the carbon emission. The opening sentence is, the carbon footprint is a very powerful tool to understand the impact of personal behavior on global warming. This sentence introduces the topic, that is carbon footprint. If you look at the sentences carefully, the closing sentence appears to be sentence number 1, that is, there is a carbon footprint calculator which allows to store individual activities that help for decisions to continually sum up the carbon dioxide emissions, thereby reducing carbon emission. Thereby reducing carbon emission, the purpose of carbon footprint was to calculate and contribute to the reduction of carbon emission. This purpose is achieved in the first sentence and this becomes the concluding sentence. Hope this is clear. We may not be able to get all the links that lead to opening sentence or closing sentence, let's try looking for certain other parameters also that help us establish the link between two sentences. The first and the most important is the idea that is elaborated in the given paragraph should flow from general to specific. The sentence that entails the general idea should precede the sentence that consists of the specific idea. For example, Indian economy is dominated by three sectors: agriculture and allied sectors, industrial sector and service sector. Out of these three, the service sector contributes to 57.88% to the GDP of the country. You getting it? The first sentence talked about general idea wherein the economy and the three sectors were discussed. From that we move to a particular sector, that was service sector. So that sentence has to come later. We can have one more link, that is chronological sequence, or it's also called time sequence approach. Now when we talk about chronology, it is but obvious that we need to cater to the time, date, year, month. So if I have an example, Indian economy was on a growth path of 7.3% in the financial year 2015-16. The growth rate reduced to a certain extent in 2016-17 financial year, and it was reduced to 7.1%. The growth rate is estimated to further reduce to 6.8% in the financial year 2017-18. So did you realize the time sequence? We move from past to present to future, 2015 to 2018. This is the chronology or the time sequence approach. We can also look for a link that is related to full name, first name, last name, or acronym also. For example, if the subject of the paragraph is Indian Space Research Organization, the opening sentence should contain the full form like this one. And subsequently in the other sentences we can use the acronym ISRO. So that sentence which contains the full name comes before the sentence that contains the short form, abbreviation or acronym. We can have more approaches like article link. This says we have indefinite articles like a and an. These two articles are symbolic for a general idea, and definite article the symbolizes particular subject. So if the subject remains common and first we have a or an, that is indefinite article with the subject, this sentence will precede the sentence this contains the definite article the before the subject. Few more links related to grammar are pronoun antecedent link. If a sentence has a proper noun or a common noun, then the sentence in which the proper noun or common noun is used, these are preceding the sentence in which the same proper noun or common noun is denoted by a pronoun. So pronoun comes later, antecedent comes before that sentence. We can talk about other things like conjunctions or adverbial phrases. So if we have conjunctions like however, although, and, then, or certain adverbial conjunctions like consequently, eventually, ultimately, these cannot be in a stand-alone sentence. These indicators refer to a past reference or a past sentence. Hence, The sentences that start with these indicators need to be positioned later. We may have an independent sentence in a paragraph. That independent sentence is such a sentence which does not have a direct link with any other sentence, hence it can be positioned anywhere. And it is always advisable to position such independent sentence towards the end of the paragraph to give a clear idea of the information that has been discussed in the paragraph. Let's practice this positioning of the independent sentence with an example. Sentence A. The Japanese giant salamander is the second largest salamander in the world, growing in length to a massive 1.5 meters. Sentence B. The Japanese giant salamander is huge and fairly ugly in appearance, though totally harmless, whose skin is a mottled grey, black and cream and heavily wrinkled. This species has an elongated body, a long broad tail and two pairs of legs that are roughly similar in size. If you carefully observe the sentences, there are two sentences out of the three that talk about the physical features or the external appearance of the Japanese salamander, that is sentence B as well as sentence C. If you understand the meaning of sentence A, it gives us the length and the importance of the position of this giant salamander. Hence, it doesn't talk about the external appearance of the salamander, hence it's an independent sentence. So, we can position this sentence at the end of the paragraph. The rearrangement would be B, C, A. Whenever a piece or a composition is created, then the author who creates this piece of composition has got certain emotions in mind. He or she has to display an attitude towards whatever he or she composes or expresses. This attitude or the emotion of the author towards the subject is known as the tone or the style of the passage. While creating links and rearranging the sentences in a parajumble, we need to keep in mind the tone of the parajumble as well. Let's practice this through an example. Sentence A. Nothing shows up the ineptness of the state more than unpreparedness in the face of predictable events. In allowing tens of thousands of followers of the Dera Sacha Sauda sect to gather for a show of strength when their leader Gurmeet Ram Rahim Singh was awaiting a judicial verdict in a rape case, the Haryana government abdicated its responsibility of maintaining law and order and protecting life property. Prohibitory orders were not enforced, with the government evidently viewing the looming protests as pressure relief valves instead of as trigger points for violence. I am sure it was very clear and evident that the tone of the author was highly critical and fault finding about the government's reaction. So, the tone continuity also helps in arranging the parajumble in proper sequence. Moving to the last link that we can check out for rearrangement is cause and effect. So, cause generally appears before the effect, hence we can have a cause and effect continuity as well. Let's practice this also through an example. Cause and effect link through a sentence. Sentence A. The government's note ban decision slowed down the activity in cash dependent sectors. Sentence B. Consequently, India's economic growth slowed to 6.1% in the fourth quarter ending March 2017. So very clear and evident that the cause of the slowdown was the note ban by the government, and the effect was a drop in the economy to 6.1% in the last quarter of 2017 financial year. So cause precedes the effect, which is obvious. I am sure you would have understood how to make links between two sentences while rearranging the parajumble. Yes, undoubtedly it's going to take a lot of time, but if you spend time with this question, accuracy is not very far. Now let's recapitulate whatever we have discussed till now, all the links, and then try applying these links in the ExCAT questions to rearrange the paragraph into a logically coherent one. So we started with identification of the subject. Then look for an opening sentence, try looking for a closing sentence, and the most important is try establishing links between any two sentences through various approaches like general idea to specific idea, chronology or time sequence approach, noun pronoun, antecedent link, article link, tense link, cause and effect reasoning, tone continuity, idea elaboration or contradiction through the use of conjunctions, and certain conclusion or linking certain sentences with adverbs. And also you have to keep in mind while identifying the independent sentence that it does not have a clear link with any other sentence, hence we can position it at the end of the paragraph to make a logically coherent paragraph. I hope all the rules are clear for sentence rearrangement. Let's practice these rules and apply on ExCAT questions. This is a question from CAT 2004. Sentence A. He felt unjustified in bypassing Congress altogether on a variety of moves. Sentence B. At times he was fighting the entire Congress. Sentence C. Bush felt he had a mission to restore power to the presidency. Sentence D. Bush was not fighting just the Democrats. Sentence E. Representative democracy is a messy business and a CEO of the White House doesn't like a legislature of second guessers and time wasters. We need to rearrange these 5 sentences with the links that we just now discussed. So, an opening sentence here can be the last one where the general reference to the president has been made by calling him a CEO of the White House. After that, we need to find out a sentence that continues the link of a CEO and relates it to Bush. So, E talks about a CEO who has certain tasks to take up which are part of representative democracy, and it continues with sentence C that says Bush felt he had a mission to restore power to the presidency. So, this is the idea elaboration of representative democracy which need to be continued through restoring power. A very glaring link is between D and B. D says Bush was not fighting just the Democrats, and B says at times he was fighting the entire Congress. So DB talk about the same action, that is fighting, and at times phrase in B actually decides that B has to succeed D. So when I have EC link and DB link, let's look at the sentence A. A provides a closure to the idea of representative democracy by expressing how much Bush ignored the Congress in various moves. The right sequence is E, C, D, B, A. The next question that we are going to discuss is from CAT 2001. Sentence A. It has become not a subject of curiosity and an object of study, but an instrument of the scientist to be taken for granted by him, to be taught to him as a mode of action. Sentence B. When quantum theory was first taught in the universities and institutes, it was taught by those who had participated or had been engaged as spectators in its discovery. Sentence C. It is taught not as history, not as a great adventure in human understanding, but as a piece of knowledge, as set of techniques to be used by the student in understanding and exploring new phenomena in the advance of science. Sentence D. Some of the excitement and wonder of the discoverer was in their teaching. Now often 2 or 3 decades it is taught not by the creators but by those who have learned from others, who have learned from those creators. In the 4 sentences, the idea that has been discussed is techniques of teaching quantum theory, which is actually introduced in sentence B when quantum theory was first taught. So B has to be your opening sentence, which is elaborated in sentence D, that some of the excitement and wonder of the discoverer was in their teaching. So how quantum theory was taught is elaborated in D. After this, there is some kind of novel idea introduced in C, that it's not taught as history, but it actually uses a technique through a knowledge base which helps the student in understanding and exploring science. Now the last sentence that remains is sentence A. It has become not a subject of curiosity and object of study, but an instrument of the scientist to be taken for granted by him, to be taught to him as a mode of action. This concludes that finally technique of quantum theory has led to its development in this manner, which is mentioned in A. Hence, the link is B, D and CA. The rearrangement is BD, CA. Very clear cut idea elaboration was there. If you would have paid attention, there was a time sequence approach also. B and D were in past tense, C and A were in present tense and present perfect tense respectively. Also, there was a pronoun antecedent link. In these 2 ExCAT questions, I am sure you would be able to relate to the theory that we discussed and applied in these questions. If we are meticulous enough to identify the links and understand the central idea of the passage, interpret it correctly, then this question type can be solved very easily. Yes, it's going to take some time, which is like around 2 to 2.5 minutes per question, but accuracy is certain if you do it in a proper manner. One more question from CAT 2005. Sentence A. Similarly, turning to caste, even though being lower caste is undoubtedly a separate cause of disparity. Its impact is all the greater when the lower caste families also happen to be poor. Sentence B. Belonging to a privileged class can help a woman to overcome many barriers that obstruct women from less thriving classes. Sentence C. It is the interactive presence of these two kinds of deprivation, being low class and being female, that massively impoverishes women from the less privileged classes. Sentence D. A congruence of class deprivation and gender discrimination can blight the lives of poorer women very severely. Sentence E. Gender is certainly a contributor to societal inequality, but it does not act independently of class. As it is pretty evident, the main topic is how a woman is treated in a society. We start this discussion on the ill treatment of women by introducing in sentence E, which is pretty general, says gender is certainly a contributor to societal inequality. So, the gender referred here is for women. After E, let's look for a link where my woman is being introduced. If you carefully look at sentence B, there is an indefinite article a before the subject woman. Hence, E, B become a link because we are talking about a woman in general sense who belongs to privileged class that helps her overcome many obstacles as compared to the women from underprivileged classes. So, EB is one link we found, and then let's try looking for some other link. If we look at D and C, D talks about two things: class deprivation and gender discrimination and its effect on poorer women, and C continues with the same idea of these two kinds of deprivation, that is low class and being female. So, D and C need to go together. Now, if you look at sentence A, which starts with similarly, an adverb means this is going to elaborate on the idea that also talks about what kind of disparity a woman goes through and how is she impacted. A gives us the final impact on the women from lower caste families if they are poorer. Hence, that's a greater impact and the closure of the paragraph. So, the sequence is E, B, D, C and A. I would reiterate, the idea was plight of women due to gender bias and class conflict. The flow of ideas from general to specific, women in general to poorer women in particular, pronoun antecedent link in C and additional premise which is the closure in A. Here we close this parajumble. So, the discussion on this ExCAT questions through the approaches that were discussed initially would have given you a lot of insight as to how to solve a key-in parajumble accurately. Till date, we have seen this question type in which the right sequence has to be entered and the options not given only in CAT to slightly increase the degree of difficulty. If you have the right approach, the right understanding, this question type can certainly be solved accurately. And obviously, the essence is practice, practice and practice. Happy solving, happy learning.